And away we go. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to Coffee Talk, where we will be having some discussion about what is going on in the world, taking a look at the news and picking it apart in a little bit of dialogue. Of course, you are listening to and/or watching Coffee Talk, which the live portion takes place on YouTube, and you can find me there at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University, simultaneously broadcasting at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as well as at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as Twitter, and fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. We might be a hair off here on getting started because for some reason the clock on the computer and the clock on the phone are off by about a minute and 10 seconds. And I think that it's the computer is running a little bit behind, or ahead rather. It's running a little bit ahead. So I may have to restart it. Being joined today by Dusty. No, I'm not. I'm being joined by Daniel, sitting in the chair in the background, as well as a little girl who is actually sitting behind my left shoulder. You can't see her where she is, though. She's in front of the window. And as always, I do read through as many of the comments as is reasonable for the benefit of those who are listening and not able to see, so that you can keep up with the conversation. And I'll go ahead and say hello to some of the people that have chimed in. See, Helter is there, as well as Urban Angst. Kimberly is here. Dragon, Chris, and Brian. Glad you could make it today. Thanks for joining us as we get ready to jump off into the world of the ridiculous, as it were. Stuff that is too crazy to be true, and yet it is. But then, since we're talking about mass media, you never quite know. You never quite know, do you? One thing I wanted to run over real quick before I get going here, and I see Cyberjack Sr. has joined us from Maryland. How are things going in Maryland? You ready to move yet? Before we get going here, I wanted to talk about the cable company really quick. This is a personal thing. Okay. So you all know that I had some issues with connectivity a few months back. If you were watching at that time, I had some connectivity issues and they had to come out and fix it because the new modem, they were having trouble syncing the modem. So now we got a notification, or my wife did, in the email and in her text message that we discovered a problem and we want to send a technician out to the house. So please schedule for a technician to come and visit. And I just want to get an opinion on this, okay? So the technician comes out and he's running around and he's checking things and he's up on the pole and he's like, everything here looks green. I can't find a problem. The notice that he got was that their computer said in his statement that our modem was too old, and that's the problem. Okay? Our modem's not old, it's brand new. It's just not their modem. We're not renting their modem. The recommendation from the computer to the technician is that we should rent their modem. And I'm like, did they set this up? Did their system set it up to have a tech go through all the rigmarole of getting a technician to come out here and waste his time and ours to try to sell us on a modem rental? Because our modem is new and it's up to date. So I'm like, what the hell is the problem? I wonder about that kind of stuff. I know I'm crazy. Boogers is here as well as New York. Glad you could make it today. Of course, also can't talk about it just yet. But as you well know, the hush money trial is in deliberation. It's in deliberation. The jurors are in session, I believe, even as we speak. And the news feeds are flooded with speculation. Flooded with speculation. I'm not fit to speculate. I know what the law is pertaining to that because we've talked about it. And I also know where it could go. I know where the law is pertaining because there shouldn't even be a trial. The only time that a non-disclosure agreement or hush money situation would end up in court is because someone violated that agreement. And in this case, Stormy Daniels violated her agreement when she talked about it. So she could be brought to court and sued. But bringing Donald Trump to court, something like that has never been done to anybody, at least not in the United States. But seriously, I know that legally that case, it never even should have gotten to a jury trial. Number one, they selected a jury trial because they didn't trust the judge, because you can request a judge trial. And I think that probably would have been a bad idea, because you can't trust the guy in the first place. And then, is the jury going to understand this? That this isn't something that you could even sue somebody over or take them to court for. So it remains to be seen how they react. Kimberly thinks they want me renting their modem. They worked in IT before, and it happens all the time. Yeah, I figured it's something like that. And Streamcatcher says their ISP tried to do the same thing with them recently, where they said they needed to install a mesh router access point because my old fiber modem wasn't working right. I called and then called them on their BS, and the guy supposedly tapped a couple of buttons and said, "Oh, everything's fixed now. You don't need that." That was after I told him I was a wireless mesh network. I had a wireless mesh network that I've been working on, or that I've been doing. And Zane is here. Glad you could make it. Stream says that they've been networking for 40 years. Yeah, and we don't even use Wi-Fi. We're all hardlined in. It's direct cable connections on everything. The computer, everything is plugged into the modem, plugged into the wall, plugged into the lines. Urban says, up here, TELUS is forcing everyone to go fiber optic on their landlines instead of copper connections with backup power. When I ask, will there be backup power through the phone jack? No clear answer. Yeah, you're not going to get backup power through a fiber optic cable. And if anything disrupts that cable, you're knocked out. You're knocked out. They're actually very sensitive. And they can be tapped into from the outside, too. They can be tapped into. Fluke Man is here. Glad you could make it today. As we get ready to tear into actual news articles and not just speculation. And like I said, that's all you can do at the moment until the jury comes out, is speculate. Monkey is here. Thanks for popping in today. Monkeying around. We're going to, what is this one? Oh, yes, Oregon. I almost lost my place because this came up a couple of times in the last week. This is a Fox News article, and it's talking about Oregon wanting, certain counties in Oregon wanting to secede from the state of Oregon. So territorial tug of war rages out west as blue state residents say enough is enough. So there we are, Oregonians. Golly. Oregonians who are fed up with the blue state's policies are seeking to relocate the Beaver state's border to neighboring Idaho, where the red state policies actually match their values. And that's a quote. The Greater Idaho Movement's executive director, Matt McCaw, told Fox News Digital that the movement to shift Oregon's border 200 miles west was created to bridge the growing tug of war in the Beaver state. The state of Oregon is divided geographically by the Cascade Mountain Range, and that geographic divide is also a huge cultural divide, McCaw says. So on the west side of Oregon, you have a different climate, it's a different economy, it's a different culture, and more urban. It's a very different place than the east side, where there are agricultural people who are very conservative and traditional. You have these two very different groups of people in Oregon that try to play tug of war over state government, he says. And this is where the problem is. This is the part of Oregon that wants to annex themselves from Oregon. You can see in the green, for those of you who can see, in the green on the left, they want to secede from the state of Oregon and join with Greater Idaho, highlighted in yellow. The political tug of war in Oregon, it has created a dividing conflict in the western state, aggravated by residents who have different values and needs from their elected officials. Well, I don't think their elected officials represent the needs of anyone in Oregon, but that's another story. Eastern Oregonians, I hate the terms that they use for people, Oregonians, are very different from Western Oregonians, McCaw said, and you can take almost any issue that is a political hot topic, whether that's immigration or taxes or abortion or gun rights or drug criminalization or decriminalization. You can take almost any issue, and what the people of Eastern Oregon want for their communities is different from what the people of Western Oregon want. And this has come up because people have asked, do you think that is going to happen? I don't find it very likely, because it's not up to the local government or county governments. It's not up to them what state they're in. That's something that we voted for on the state level by the executive, and and fostered by the executive branch, approved by the whatever their house is there in Oregon. They're not going to let that happen. They're not going to let that happen. They're not going to lose all that federal tax money, because their federal tax kickbacks depend on how many residents they have. If they annex 10% of their people or 5% or however many it is, they lose all that money. They lose all that incentive. They're not going to give that up. They're not going to give up the tax money. That doesn't work. And Paul is here from New Jersey. Monkey says the U.S. says to never secede from the Union, but not the one on seceding from another state. Well, they don't want you to secede from the Union either. And every state does technically have the right to secede from the Union, but we know how that works. Just ask anybody from the Civil War. It doesn't work. They're not going to let that happen either, for the same reasons. You lose all that population, you lose that commerce, you lose that tax money. Hell no. They're not going to allow that to happen any more than Oregon is going to allow them to secede. If they actually did break away, I'd be shocked. It may be a growing movement, but they're going to continue to be ignored until they give up. And Raccoon is here. Thanks for joining us today. But I just wanted to cover that because it had come up. People have been asking about it. That is a thing. The Oregonians want to break away in that lower left corner. It says move Oregon's border. And Oregon's not going to move that border. They don't want to lose that tax money. They don't want to lose those federal incentives. They don't want to lose those voting rights, when it comes to electoral colleges and the like, because the number of constituents you have in a certain demographic counts. They don't want to give it up. And Monkey says if it happens, it'll look like a middle finger state. Yeah, there you go. That would be giving the middle finger to Oregon anyways. And it would open up a can of worms, because other states would be like, yeah, I want to secede too. Hey, what about me? Why can't I break away from Massachusetts? Or who knows? I can just imagine. I can just imagine the directions that would go in. There's no way the state would allow it. They'll pretend to have a close vote just to satisfy people, but they won't allow it. You know how they fake having votes. I forget what movie it was. There was a film where they had a Supreme Court justice vote, and they were told what to vote for. And he's like, you and you vote this way, you and you vote this, you be the tiebreaker and lean this way, so it doesn't look like, so it looks almost like a split decision, and it doesn't seem like everybody's on board. And then the guy is like, why do I have to be the tiebreaker guy again? I was the tiebreaker guy last time. I don't remember what movie it was, but I bet you that kind of crap really happens. I really do. I do not trust these people. But I've got a more interesting map, and this one is far more important than what's going on in Oregon. Daily Mail article. Terrifying, they call it. Terrifying map shows just how much farmland China owns in the United States. This should never have happened. It shouldn't have gotten this far, but I'm going to read the article. The upcoming House Farm Bill will contain measures to restrict foreign entries like China, or entities, excuse me, like China, from scooping up American farmland in a big win for national security, a Republican who helped secure the provisions told Daily Mail. Foreign entities own a total of 40 million. Let me reemphasize. Foreign entities own a total of 40 million acres of U.S. farmland, and China has bought up nearly 347,000 acres, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Now lawmakers are working to further restrict China and other adversaries from snatching up coveted land in the fiscal year of 2024 in their new farm bill. This should never have been allowed in the first place. This, I'm already frustrated just even thinking about this. It never should have been allowed in the first place. It is absolutely the mistake of any government to allow any other country or government by default to own natural resources within your border. No other country should own farmland, oil rights, coal mining operations, anything like that in the United States, and vice versa. We shouldn't hold interests in other countries. Having a brokerage with another country where you're in a partnership may be one thing, but outright owning it is something else. So here we go back to the article. It says Representative Ashley Hinson, who represents a heavy agricultural district, says it's critical to stop China in order to protect U.S. food supply chains and bolster national security. Communist China shouldn't be allowed to buy another acre of American farmland, nor should we rely upon our top foreign adversary for key parts of our food supply chain. And she would be correct. I mean, they could decide to fallow all the fields one year. They could order these farms, because remember, it's a communist country. And the companies that own this farmland are going to do whatever they're told. Fallow all the fields. Don't produce anything this year. Or use something toxic in pesticides as if it wasn't toxic enough already. And here's your map representing the states where they own farmland. These are the states where China currently owns farmland. Obviously, they don't own all of that, but those are the states that have sold out farmland to China. I'd be curious to see how much acreage is sold to what other countries also. That should not happen. It shouldn't be a thing. As a matter of fact, it ought to be reversed. You want to spend a fortune in government funds on something? Make it a law that they can't own farmland in this country, and then pay them for the value of the land so that they don't have anything to complain about after the fact. Here, this is what you invested in it. Take it and go. Don't come back. What are they going to do? What are they going to do about it? This is why Florida, you see Florida has no Chinese interests. They've already outlawed it. If I remember correctly, Governor DeSantis made it so that the Chinese couldn't buy any more land in Florida anyways. And I'll catch up a couple more comments here real quick because I'm falling behind. Flukeman says Texas was talking about Texit. I think they would stand good chance compared to places like New York and California, because Texas more or less follows Second Amendment. They have their own military, correct? Yeah, they have their own militia. But it's all talk. It'll never be allowed. They bring it up every time they get pissed off. Helter says this has always been a loophole in capitalism. No need for armed conquest. Just buy it. Ask the British. And Raccoon says, didn't Gates set fire to the fields that he bought? That I'm not sure about. Kimberly says, I'm sure there's no underlying nefarious purpose for China to buy U.S. farmland. Yeah, no kidding. To hold it over our heads at the very least, to make us beholden to them. Monkey says China should have never even bought a single acre of land in the U.S. ever. Correct. No other foreign entity should. Other countries don't allow this kind of stuff. Not all of them, but there are plenty of other countries that would never allow a foreign interest to own a natural resource in their territory. This should never have been allowed to get this far. It should never have been allowed to get this far. And not just China, no other country. We shouldn't be beholden to any other country for a resource, especially something like this. They could completely disrupt, any one of those countries that owns enough farmland could completely disrupt our food supply chain. We're not going to produce anything this year. We're closing all the farms. Or, like I said, use something more toxic than normal as a pesticide, and then we're screwed. Dragon says they wouldn't be surprised if the senators or Congress members are taking a cut. Welcome to New America. Yeah, no kidding. And Raccoon says they're surprised to see Texas on that list. Yeah, really. Chris says overlay the map with locations of military installations. Many are close. Good point, Chris. And Armand says China just wants farmland to land their balloons. Yes. Kimberly says DeSantis definitely takes care of his state. He tries to. He gets relentlessly mocked for it, though. But I can't fault anybody who's actually trying to do the job. You don't like DeSantis? Fine. Is he doing the job? Is he trying to actually protect his constituents? And New York says, yes, the Chinese are buying land near our military installations, too. Yeah. There's a huge problem with this. And like I said, not just with China, but with any country purchasing and owning farmland in the United States, or owning oil rights or coal rights or any kind of mineral rights, the mining of iron. I don't care what it is. They should not have access to the natural resource of another country. Bartering with another country, having some kind of an arrangement or some kind of a partnership, sure, but not outright owning anything. And that's pointed out right here. It says the Chinese land purchases near important U.S. military installations have been a particular concern for lawmakers and government officials. There you go. Never should have been allowed to happen. It's in the article. In 2022, for example, the China-based food producer Feifeng Group acquired 300 acres of land in Grand Forks, just 20 minutes down the road from the Grand Forks Air Force Base, where some of the nation's most sensitive drone technology is based. Yeah, they could be setting up secret spy installations there. They could have a barn full of radio equipment. We don't know what the hell's going on. Air Force Major Jeremy Fox wrote a memo this year characterizing the move as being emblematic of Chinese efforts to install themselves close to sensitive U.S. defense installations. Very much so. Very much so. There's a lot of problems with this. Fluke Man said if China and U.S. goes to war, they can easily attack from within and just sit back and watch. Yeah, or just disrupt us. I don't think a full-scale invasion is realistic, for the same reason that it's never been realistic for anybody to try to invade the Soviet Union back in the day. It's just too damn big. So are we. United States, China, Russia, certain countries are just too damn big. The logistics would be insane. I used Russia as an example, or the USSR as an example, because there's been several failed attempts over the years to invade the infrastructure of Russia, simply because it's too big. For that very reason, Napoleon failed, Germany failed in World War II, and so on. China, even during the Anglo-Asiatic Wars, or the Opium Wars, if you will, between Great Britain and China, Great Britain beat China twice, but they never invaded. All they did was hold Hong Kong, and they knew that was enough. They never wanted to go into the infrastructure of China because it's too big. Monkey says now China's trying to use the two major opposition parties in Taiwan to force and pass a legislation to give more power to legislation in favor of the CCP. Yeah, I read an article about that actually recently. They're trying to sway opinions They're trying to sway opinions. On this map, for those of you who can see, and I'll leave that up there for a second, it shows how many acres are owned in each state, and they've color coded it. Texas, 159,640 acres owned by Chinese interests. Goodness. Kansas is the smallest one with only 1,000 acres. There's a lot of like silos in Kansas, though. A lot of silos. One lousy. They're trying to just get a foothold there, I guess. Yeah, Texas is no. Virginia's the biggest one. That's the biggest problem. Virginia, 540,000 acres in Virginia. And you know that Virginia is like the capital where the headquarters are of all of the major like intelligence communities are. The FBI headquarters, CIA headquarters, all of that's in Virginia, amongst other things. They shouldn't have 1 acre in Virginia. That makes no sense. That's life, but not as we know it is here from Scotland. What time is it in Scotland today? Beautiful country. Let me see. Monkey says now there's 1 million people outside of the building in Taipei. And Urban says, I wonder how many acres are directly owned by Bill Gates and or his foundation. Yeah, and that'd be interesting too. Like I said, I'd be curious to see other maps of what other countries own. Oh, here's another one. Okay. Red on this map is locations of farms owned by Iran. Why does Iran own anything in the United States? You see the problem? Do you see what I mean? Light blue is Cuba, and I only see one. I only see one for Cuba, and it looks like it's in Oklahoma. Green is Russia, and there's a handful of spots on Russia, and one big area on Hawaii there, as well as California. And Venezuela is purple on this big map. And I guess these are some of the larger outside interests holding. And it says here that they're calling it the Farmvasion map. So these are the locations of the actual farms on this map. But there you go. Why does Iran and Cuba and Russia and Venezuela own anything in the United States? That should never have been allowed to happen. That should never have been allowed to happen. Nature Nerd says lots of yellow for Venezuela. No, Venezuela is purple. Yellow is China on this map. It shows the exact locations of the farmland for China, specifically, not just what state. And Sven says seize all of it and sell it in small plots. Or at the very least, seize it and give them their money back and tell them to never come back. You know what I mean? And That's Life says it's 7:25 in the evening, dull and damp. In the AM or PM? I forgot to ask. Monkey says, guess it didn't come up, but the Taiwanese Progressive Party politicians are trying to physically prevent the opposition legislation from voting. And Monkey says, funny enough, according to the map, China has one in the country where there's a military base in Ohio where Kent is. I bet they do. And Booger says, bets on Bill Gates buying up farm ground for outside countries' interests. He might have. He might have. Flukeman says he thinks Hitler could have defeated Stalin if Operation Barbarossa started in spring instead of summer, and war documentaries never mentioned spies or sabotage in the Soviet Union. Well, they would have just done what they did to Napoleon, though. If there was a large-scale ground invasion, they burned everything. They just kept moving in country and burning everything as they went, and without a resupply chain, eventually you'll starve them out and they'll turn around and go home on their own. That's what happened to Napoleon's troops. Anyways. jumping across here, we're going to jump to Illinois. And Nature Nerd says, can you own property as a foreigner in any of these countries? And of course, the answer is no. No, they don't allow it. Only we do because we're stupid. Well, not us personally, but the government sure is. The government never should have allowed it. Never should have allowed it. I just wanted to throw this out there. And this comes from the Center Square, article by the Center Square. In the dead of night, Illinois House approves the largest spending plan in the state's history. Yep. And the reason I want to bring this up is because it always seems like when stuff like this goes down, it's in secret chambers in the middle of the damn night when no one will know about it until it's too late. In the dead of night, Illinois House Democrats approved the largest spending plan in state history. The more than $53 billion plan increases taxes by $750 million and spends 32% more, or $12.8 billion, than when Governor Pritzker took office in 2019. The measure also spends $400 million more than what Pritzker proposed in February. Approved by the Senate late in the evening Sunday and by the House in the early morning hours Wednesday. The plan also pays $971 million for non-citizen migrant health care, direct services, and welcoming centers, because you don't want their feelings hurt. State Representative Jehan Gordon Booth carried the plan for the House. This budget is balanced, reasonable, and fair, Gordon Booth said late Tuesday during a committee hearing. State Representative David Smyer said Democrats are not spending wisely. You think? Quote, I have concerns that there are gimmicks in this budget that put us on a path towards a giant collision in the future, and I hope I don't have to say I told you so when this happens, but you will, and it will happen. Illinois is already a disaster. They're going to add all of this to it. Yeah, that's just really intelligent. Republicans warned that the state is overspending. They've been overspending for decades. Even when billions of one-time federal C virus dollars were provided to the state during the pandemic, those dollars are dried up. David Smyer said while increasing taxes on businesses, the plan also shifts nearly $1 billion from other state funds to general revenue funds. Yeah, raise taxes on small businesses so that they all have to close their doors and go somewhere else. That'll get you a lot of money. Certainly frustrating as a taxpayer, both as a business owner and as an individual taxpayer. I don't believe that you are being good stewards of the state's dollars, he said. Wow, that sounds like me, because I'm the one that's always saying they need to be good stewards of the money. David Smyer noted the budget also gives Democratic legislations millions of tax dollars for special projects in their districts. You know, like painting rainbow crosswalks and hanging Black Lives Matter signs and funding George Floyd statues, that kind of stuff. Gordon Booth acknowledged the fiscal headwinds the state faces with decreased revenue growth, but defended the plan. We are steadfast in our leadership roles in terms of ensuring that we are managing the fiscal house that we have in front of us. Okay. Now, they're making a huge mistake. They're overspending. They're being bad stewards of the tax dollars. They're raising taxes, and again, being sneaky about it. Because here's the thing. They did this. They met for this, and they did this at 2:30 a.m. in the morning. 2:30 a.m. Not much opposition at 2:30 in the morning, is there? Nature Nerd says Chicago's in crazy amounts of debt already. Exactly. They've been overspending and for decades. Even when my wife and I lived in Illinois, long time ago, when the National Lottery Commission suspended Illinois' ability to sell lottery tickets because they found out that they weren't paying winners, because they didn't have any money in the lottery funds, because they had diverted money from the lottery to the Highway Commission because that money was missing. And they wouldn't let him sell lottery tickets until they got it sorted out. That was like, what, a decade ago? And that's just one example. They've been in the shit for decades. And all they keep doing is raising taxes. And then when they get that extra tax money, instead of fixing any of the problems or paying any of it off, they waste it. Even what was pointed out here, there'll be millions available in districts for special projects. That's how they got this pushed through, because it's a mess. It's 12.8 billion. What did they say here? Is that the right number? 12.8 billion more than what they said it was going to be. The highest bill, the most expensive bill passed in Illinois' history, and they don't have the money, and they don't have the resources to get it. Oh, I don't know what to tell you. If you're in Illinois, it might be a good idea to get the hell out of there. Might be a good idea. Unknown says Illinois government is a perfect example of the results of allowing corruption to reach a certain threshold. And we're seeing it across the board in a variety of governments or micro governments in the United States, in all of these communities. It just keeps getting worse because they keep getting away with it. No one's really stopping them. No one's really fighting it. No one's really resisting it. They're being called out on it. But calling them out and making them accountable are not the same thing. And this is what you're left with. They're already teetering on bankruptcy. They're already overspending. They're already cutting important things like water and sewage and trash and fire departments and medical and police. They're overrun with illegal immigrants, spending a fortune on that. There isn't enough tax money to go around. And what do? Raise taxes again. Oh, that's great. They've got insanely high property taxes. They've got multiple taxes. Like if you go to the store, especially if you're in Cook County, you don't just pay sales tax. You pay a sales tax, a city tax, a county tax, this tax and that tax. Is all kinds of bullshit on there. Unknown Knows says states becoming a failed state. Yeah, many states are becoming a failed state. And Kimberly says they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Why are they not being audited? Well, they've got to vote for that audit. They're not going to audit themselves, but they should be audited. They should be held accountable. And even when they are audited, are they going to be held accountable? We're seeing this now with Governor Newsom and the, $28 billion that's missing. I think it's 28, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. From the money that's been paid into the homeless for the last 5 years, into their homeless programs, and it's completely unaccountable. They don't even know what the money was spent on. And everybody's just like, well, no, we don't know. Oh, well, we'll try to be more accountable next time. They don't even know where it went or what's going on. But anyways, for your entertainment, ladies and gentlemen, I give you dear old, sweet old, lovable old Sleepy Joe, Sleepy Uncle Joe, falling asleep during the Memorial Day ceremony that he was attending. For those of you who can see, sitting on the right, they have the guest speaker up there. The Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, is on the podium there. And on the right, sitting down, gripping the chair with one hand and his knee with the other, trying desperately to stay awake. Everyone's favorite uncle, Joe Biden. Watch him if you will. This is only like less than a minute, this clip.
I had the privilege of serving in the United States Army for more than 4
Look
decades.
at his face.
And
Here it
every
comes.
Memorial Day,
He's fighting it.
I remember those who gave all
He's
in
fighting
defense
it.
of our country, including
And
the
he's
battle
gone.
buddies who
He's
served
out.
and fought alongside me.
I gotta love it.
We got through.
You could see his face
They
straining
did.
and struggling. But
And
he's
that
knocked
pain
out.
will never go away. I could tell their stories
You gotta love it.
for hour after hour. But for today, I hope that the story of one fallen American hero
And poor
may
Lloyd
stand
there.
for so many more.
Well, Lloyd can't see him, but
So
he
on this
maintains his
Memorial
composure.
Day, my thoughts are with the family of U.S. Army Staff Sergeant
Yeah, he's out.
Stephen
I'm sure
of Apollo, Pennsylvania.
I'm sure that the press secretary will say that he was, you know,
I had the privilege
that he was
Let's bring
meditating.
in Axiom Strategies' Aaron
of
Perrine.
serving in the United States Army
Cut
for
that
more
out.
than 4 decades.
They'll say he was meditating, that he was being solemn or praying. No, he was out cold. Unknown says stage 4 Alzheimer's. And Helter says the commander-in-chief is asleep and the defense secretary gets the fallen hero's name wrong. Oh, yeah, I know it. Kimberly says maybe he should ask Hunter about tips to stay awake. Yeah, indeed. Maybe he should. I'm sure Hunter has a few suggestions of how he might get a little more pep in his step. And you see that pep in his step every once in a while. You do see Joe. That's when he gets the Joe jog. You all know the Joe jog, right? It's when he gets up his head of steam and he starts doing this and he jogs for like 4 steps and then he starts to stumble because he gets exhausted that quick. Dragon says, meanwhile, enemy countries are looking at this and laughing at our expense. Yeah, I bet you they are. He says, I bet they're spinning in their media. It's not that hard. They don't have to spin it to make us look stupid at this point. They don't have to spin it. We already look foolish. All they have to do is showcase it. And it is embarrassing. It is very embarrassing to have to deal with that every day. The constant insults and the constant embarrassment from our government and the attempts that the media makes to try to cover for him. It's like that Charlemagne guy, radio host. He calls himself a god. I refuse to say it. Just Charlemagne is good enough. And who was it? The View? Somebody was trying to coerce him into supporting Biden, and he won't do it. And he had made a statement, something to the fact, I'm not quoting it exactly, I just remember him talking about it or reading about it anyways, I read about it, that he's not there to fix things for Joe. He's like, I'm not Mr. Save a Biden. You know, you can't do it. And Flukeman says, people complain why old people are allowed to live sucking up free money, pensions, healthcare system, and at the same people voted for creepy Uncle Joe. Yeah, well, that's that Canadian mindset. Where did you go? Miss Kitty was just under me. She walked out of the room. That's that Canadian mindset where they want to give you the maid service, as they call it, that's assisted suicide now for old people and for people with mental and physical disabilities. Oh, Raccoon said they'd probably fall asleep too. Oh, no. Oh, no. Say it isn't so. Say it isn't so. But, you know, that's not what the youth of our nation are concerned about. They're not concerned about that. They're still trying to defend Palestine. LA Times, pro-Palestinian protesters shut down 101 freeway in downtown Los Angeles. Yeah, let's block the freeway again. Dozens of pro-Palestinian protesters briefly shut down the 101 freeway in downtown Los Angeles on Monday afternoon. The protesters blocked traffic as they held Palestinian flags and signs reading "Stop the Genocide" and "End the Occupation Now" and chanted "Eyes on Rafah" according to video posted to social media. The protest came a day after what appeared to be one of the deadliest attacks in Israel's ongoing war with Hamas. On Sunday, an Israel strike on a tent camp housing displaced Palestinians in the southern Gaza city of Rafah killed dozens. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday described the strike as a tragic mistake that was under investigation. They got a lot of slack for that. They were given a very hard time in the media about that friendly fire, as it were. But quite frankly, that's what you call collateral damage in the military. And every government who's ever been at war is guilty of it. During Desert Storm, when the United States invaded Iraq, when we invaded Iraq, I think more U.S. soldiers were killed by friendly fire than anything else. We accidentally attacked our own encampments multiple times. That sort of thing happens, unfortunately. Brian says, who would be worse as president, Joe Biden or Mr. Burns? Joe Biden. If it was Burns, at least other countries would be afraid, because Burns is freaking ruthless. He's ruthless. Oh. It says a Los Angeles Police Department spokesman said Monday that officers were called to monitor a protest downtown at 3 p.m. We responded to some protesters walking through the immediate downtown area. Initially, they started blocking traffic, but then they were up on the sidewalk obeying traffic laws, and that's when they went down onto the freeway. California Highway Patrol Sergeant Alejandro Rubio said that LAPD alerted the CHP, or CHIPS, that about 50 protesters had moved onto the freeway near Alameda Street at 448. However, by the time CHIP officers arrived at the scene around 5 p.m., there were no longer any protesters on the freeway. So they went in and out on purpose. They got out of there fast enough to not get arrested, is basically what happened. Chicken shit. If you want to protest, I know, go block freeways and highways and roads in Gaza. That's what you need to do. Get yourself a plane ticket. Go to LAX, fly out to the Middle East, and wave your signs there. Helter says, no, not one of those people blocking the freeway would have the balls to go fight for the people they say they're supporting. Exactly. They want someone else to do it. Jane says, anyone here that North Korea dropped bags of trash and poop on South Korea? What's going on? Then heard 100 reporters were killed in Gaza recently. I haven't heard anything about reporters getting killed in Gaza. I did hear about North Korea flying balloons filled with sewage. I heard that. I have not pinned down an article about it, but I did hear that. Nature Nerd says Canada's acting like Soylent Green with assisting their own people to their death, acting like it's a happy thing instead of living your life. Dragon says if you have to cover your face during a protest, chances are you're doing something you know you shouldn't be doing. And then Nature Nerd says they would only be flights to Egypt where these protesters would get arrested also. Egypt would be a hell of a lot harsher than we would. They have no idea. Getting arrested in the United States is a cakewalk in comparison to many other places. You know, when I was working for Kinney Systems, I used to work security for Kinney Systems in Massachusetts about 1 million years ago, and there was a guy that worked there from Ethiopia, and he says that one of the things that they told him when he was allowed to come to the United States, because he was coming here to go to college. He came to the United States to go to college. He got a work visa. He was working for Kinney Systems. And he said that when he came here, they told him if he ever got in trouble and he ended out on the streets, hungry, homeless, whatever, to break a storefront window somewhere and get arrested, because then the system would take care of him. It's not like jail where he's from by any means. Because he would be terrified to go to prison in Ethiopia, but not in the United States. Not in the United States. Isn't that sad? They school you to break the law here so that you can get 3 hots in a cot. Isn't that right? That's pathetic. That's pathetic. But that's how wishy-washy the West looks to many of these other countries. And we're going to bounce to, where is this woman? Marilyn. No, that's her name. Marilyn Mosby. And she's in Baltimore, I believe. USA Today article. I love showcasing it. I love showcasing it when a corrupt politician gets their comeuppance. We've talked about her before, but sentencing has been passed. USA Today ex-prosecutor Marilyn Mosby sentenced in the scheme using C-virus funds to buy her Florida condo. Yeah, there you go. Former top prosecutor in Baltimore, Maryland, convicted of fraud for lying about financial hardship during the pandemic in order to buy a beach house with money from the federal government, and will serve no prison time. Oh my, I guess she's not going to get her comeuppance after all. Marilyn Mosby, 44, sentenced to 12 months of house arrest, 100 hours of community service, and 3 years of supervised release, aka probation. Thursday, Eric Barron, United States Attorney for the District of Maryland, announced, wow, she got off easy. If I did that, I'd get 5 years. Holy shit. The ex-prosecutor was found guilty of multiple felony charges in 2 separate trials, one that took place this year and one last fall. During the sentencing hearing in Prince County, U.S. District Judge Lydia K. Grigsby sentenced Mosby to home confinement with electric monitoring and also ordered forfeiture of 90% of the property Mosby bought with the fraudulently obtained mortgage. So they took their money back. Mosby garnered national attention in 2015 when she charged 6 Baltimore police officers in connection to the death of Freddie Gray, a black man. Gray, 25, died in police custody a week after he suffered a severe spinal injury while traveling without a seatbelt in the back of a van on the way to the police station. Under the law, Mosby has faced up to 30. I think all of those guys got off too, didn't they? I don't think anybody went to jail. I could be thinking of a different case. Under the law, Mosby has faced up to 35 years in prison for her fraud and perjury convictions. Assistant U.S. Attorney Sean Delaney and Aaron Zielinski prosecuted the federal cases. Federal court records show they had argued for a 20-month prison sentence. The court agrees these are very serious offenses and that the conduct displays a pattern of dishonesty. The Baltimore Sun reported Grigsby told Mosby in court, this dishonesty also occurred when you held the highest office for a prosecutor in the city of Baltimore. While Mosby's crimes didn't have victims in the traditional sense, the outlet reported Grigsby said that Mosby betrayed people who looked up to her and her community. But then you gave her a slap on the wrist. She was eligible for up to 35 years in prison, which you or I probably would have gotten. They compromised with 20-month prison sentence, and then the judge gives her freaking probation and sends her home with an ankle bracelet. Wow, she's got something on somebody. She's got something on somebody. Holy crack. Unknown No says cops have been busted for Wu Flu fraud too. Yeah, they've been busted for fraud. Fluke Man says people from third world probably thinking, why would they need to go Four Seasons Hotel if they can get free services in jail? Kimberly wants to know if she was disbarred. I'm not sure. It doesn't say in the article. Dragon says it was never going to happen. She's a woman of privilege. Politicians don't send their own to prison. Don't send their own to prison. And then Helter says, had it been you or me coming from a non-privileged background, we would serve time. Yeah, I would have gotten buried. I'm sure you would have too. They would have tried to make an example out of you. But yeah, that's a cakewalk. I mean, she didn't even the 20 months was a cakewalk compared to what she was faced with on multiple federal charges, multiple felony charges. Yeah, she got off easy. Misappropriating funds to buy a condo in Florida. It was a condo, right? Oh no, I'm sorry. It was a beach house. She bought a beach house in Florida. And I guess they seized that and are selling it to recover the money. But still. Oh, there's your diversity hire, folks. Enjoy. Enjoy. Oh, is a black woman. Let's hire her. Let's make her the chief. Let's give her a really important political position. Oops. There you go. That's how it works, folks. That's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so. Because Stone Cold said so. Who remembers Stone Cold Steve Austin? And also, speaking of corruption, this isn't corruption. This is just stupid. And this is a thing in California. Unknown No says there's not very many cheap beach houses in Florida. There's none, and not unless you buy it as a dead-on fixer-upper. But, you know, she could have found more money to pay for that as well. This ties in with that to a degree. New York Post article: embattled California DA Pamela Price mocked for plans to announce her Chinese name months after disrespecting the community. There she is, Chinese now. She's Chinese, everybody. So there we are. An embattled woke district attorney in California has been mocked for planning a ridiculous press conference to announce her new Chinese name months after she was accused of being disrespectful towards the Asian community. Alameda County District Attorney Pamela Price has been set to host the naming event in Oakland on Tuesday to mark Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month before her office canceled the appearance at the last minute without giving a reason. News of the press conference and its abrupt cancellation sparked immediate backlash as critics accused the black DA, who is facing a recall election in November, of cultural appropriation. Isn't it cultural misappropriation, not appropriation? Because if I put on a wig like that, it would be cultural misappropriation and they try to burn my house down. Just asking. Just asking. She looks Chinese to me. I can't tell. I must have missed something that day. It goes on to say, I think it's ridiculous. This is a quote. I think it's ridiculous. It's cultural appropriation and pandering at its highest level, said Charles Huang, who heads the local National Asian Pacific Islanders Prosecutors Association. Oh my God. Local TV reporter Dion Lim also said she had to convince people it was even real. Some people messaged me to ask if it was an April Fool's joke. I sent this person the press release that came from the DA's office. Now, let me show you here. Here's her new Chinese ID. Just in case you thought I was fooling with you. There's her new Chinese ID. I don't know what her Chinese name is because I can't frickin' read it. Must be nice. Here's the funny thing about this. This is a common practice in California. This is a common practice in California. Politicians do this to garner votes from the Chinese population. Are you sitting down, folks? It works. It works. They're just calling her out on it because she's in a recall election. It works. I'm not kidding. Let me see. Here we go. Further down in the article. Local politicians have been adopting Chinese names in the area for several years, in part to become closer to the local community, including Vice President Kamala Harris was one of the first to do it when she was running to be San Francisco's district attorney in 2003. Oh, no. That's right. Kamala Harris was one of the first ones to do this. She was the trendsetter, ladies and gentlemen. Nature Nerd says she's not Chinese. No, not by a long shot. I know I'm falling way behind here. Sorry about that as I try to catch things up or try to round things off. And I see Brian made a donation to the channel. Thank you, Brian. Very much appreciated. Goes a long way towards helping us with our felines and getting them taken care of. All the help I can get, folks. I'll take all the help I can get. Helter says political pandering is seldom a good thing, especially when it comes to race and culture. The watchword in politics is to be your authentic self. None of them are, but yeah. Yeah. And no, she's not a Chinese person, because some people are asking. No, she's not. She's not a Chinese person. She's just pretending to be so immersed in the culture that she has to get a Chinese ID with a new name. That's what we're doing here. But with that, we are at the top of the hour, so I will go ahead and start rounding things off. Again, you were listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you can find me on YouTube. Please do check me out on YouTube, on Coffee Talk, and on Prepper University. Join me there as well. And I have a new video up on Coffee Talk today, by the way. There's a new video I put up earlier today. Also, you can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, and that is at Coffee Talk Chat, and fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. Thanks again to Brian, who made a donation to the channel. And thank you, everybody else who was able to join us here today. Hope you got something out of the conversation.